Welcome back, everybody. It is another episode of Important Work. I'm your host, Chris Angel, and I'm here with my guest this week, Jennifer Spor. Hi, Jennifer.
Hey, Chris. How are you?
I am great. Thanks for being on the show. I love talking about important work, and today we get to talk about your important work in the world. So yes, you and I met through on Facebook through a Facebook group that Amber McKenzie had started. Amber has a show called Holistic Northwest Living. And some, through the magic of Facebook, we met that way. And here we are talking about your work. So maybe give me some backstory. What do you do now? What did you do before that? Let's just start there.
Yeah. So I've had my coaching practice for the last couple of years. Prior to that, I worked in the industry for over 23 years. And
what was the industry?
Retail.
Oh, retail. Got it. Okay.
Yes. And so I essentially reached a point in my life where I had checked all the boxes off the list of what traditional society teaches us that it means to achieve success, right? I ended up establishing a really, successful career, had the big job, the salary, and all the things, right? What happened after a while is that I ran out of things to chase outside myself, thinking that would bring me the fulfillment, right? And that's really when the fog started to lift. That's really when I started, waking up. But I didn't take action right away, despite feeling unfulfilled in my career and being in a somewhat toxic environment. It was really when my mom was diagnosed with terminal cancer a year or two after the fog started to lift. That was really my catalyst for taking action. At the time, I was living on the East Coast. Where I'm at in Coeur d'Alene now is actually closer to where I grew up. So at the time, I was flying back and forth trying to juggle my job, and in which I felt like I had to be on all the time, and spending, my mom's final days with her. I felt like I had to choose. And there was really a moment for me when I was actually at her bedside, dealing with something with my job where I felt like I had to be involved, and I had to choose between spending time with her and that. And I just said to myself right then, you're not stuck in your life. You're not trapped. You can do something else. And that was the beginning of the end. And I ended up stepping down from my career because I couldn't do my job remotely. I wanted to move to be closer to where my remaining family members were at the time. And so it sounds like the lyrics of a country song or something, but I, rented out my house in New Jersey, packed up my car, and drove out west. Wow. And that was it, and it was actually my own journey of transition during that time a few years ago that inspired me to do the work that I'm doing today. So I created this path from nothing.
Maybe there's so much rich stuff in what you just said, because I want to dive into some of that and unpack what you noticed in that season. Because I think a lot of people who are on the verge of their important work, but aren't doing their important work yet in the world, are in that space of they might be bored, they might be overwhelmed, they might be tired of the same old thing. Like there's who knows all the circumstance, and there's something just on the other side waiting for them. And I'd love to look at some of the signs of that. But before I do that, just tell me what you do now, specifically in terms of transformational coaching, et cetera.
Yep. So now I am a transformational coach and a spiritual mentor and an intuitive. I work with spiritually driven leaders who are feeling stuck in their 9-to-5 to gain the clarity and confidence they need to answer their higher calling.
Yeah, I love that. It's so cool how our life prepares us for our work. I mean, that's what I believe anyway. I think that a lot of times our wounds, our experiences, all of those things are actually preparation for how we get to share back with the world what life has taught us. Right. And so
I believe that wholeheartedly, that every experience in our lives serves a higher purpose. Nothing happens at random. Everything is cause and effect. And it's, that wisdom that we gain that that we're meant to share with others to support them, on their journey. I always say to avoid some of the same potholes, so to speak.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Well, so let's go. I want to go back and dive into then some of the things that you have noticed in your own journey, but what you also see with clients who come to you. What are some of the signs when people are coming up to a decision about important work, like what their life is for, their purpose? How do they know that they're, like, from the outside looking in, I might feel like, gosh, my life is, I'm stuck in my life. When in reality, what's happening is there's something bigger waiting for you, and what you're doing now just doesn't fulfill you like it used to. So like that, like, what are some of the things you see that are signs that people are coming up on what's next for
Right.
them?
So our got my words switched around. Our emotions are an excellent navigation system. And if you're familiar with Abraham Hicks, which I know you are, that is discussed in their book, Ask and It Is Given. We're meant to feel happy in our lives, to feel joy in the work that we're doing. When we don't, that is simply an indicator that there is a change that needs to be made. So a lot of the people that cross my path that I work with are in that place where they're feeling stagnant, unfulfilled. They may have loved their job at one point, but they don't anymore. And there's nothing wrong with that, because society tells us that we should fear change, but actually our souls crave expansion. And when we feel stagnant, it just means that we're ready, to take on the next thing. A lot of people approach change also from a perspective of loss, and I did the same thing as well, right? I had this well-established career and I was scared to lose it. I thought to myself, I've worked so hard to get to where I'm at, but none of that is in vain. Every experience that we have in our lives is preparing us for the moment that we're in now. So anyways, not to get too long-winded, but the people that cross my path are just in that place where they're feeling called to make a change. They know something needs a change, but they feel overwhelmed and they've become paralyzed in action because they can't see how to get from here to there. And they've likely tried all the things as well, right? Listened to the podcast, the webinars, read the self-help books, and even tried meditation, but it's just not helping them to gain the clarity that they need. So that's where they're at when they come to me.
It's interesting too, because where does clarity live? I mean, you would think that by reading a book or listening to a podcast, even journaling and reflecting, meditating, that these are things that are often prescribed for clarity. How do we get clear? Yeah.
So it's probably better to start answering your question from the place of what blocks our clarity, right? What blocks our clarity is when we're in a worry or fearful energy. When we are feeling those lower vibrational emotions, our body becomes constricted and we become shut down. So that is why even in a state of meditation, someone may be trying to meditate or trying to journal, but they're feeling blocked creatively because they're in too much of a constricted energy. Does that make sense?
Yeah. The image I got was, have you ever, you can drive down the freeway and you'll see a car with its rims going 70 miles an hour. And if it has like the spokes where like you actually can see through the spokes to like the wheel. Have you ever noticed that? Like,
yeah.
But it's going fast enough that you can actually, it's like it isn't there and you can see through the spokes to the wheel. But if it were going like a mile an hour, you wouldn't be able to see the wheel because it would just, anyway, that's what it made me think of was the higher you're vibrating, the higher your frequency, the more you can see through what you need to see through. And that's the lower your vibration, the more it blocks it.
Yes, it's such a fantastic way that you described that. It's so true. As our energetic frequency increases, the veil lifts, essentially.
Yeah. Huh. That's really cool. Yeah, I hadn't thought of that before, but that's what popped when you said that. I love that. So then so what you're saying is that a lot of times it's the frequency we're operating at that is blocking us from seeing or having clarity about what's next for us? How do we remove those blocks, or how do we get past that?
Yeah, so that happens through shifting our mindset and developing a deeper connection with our intuition. So, and aligning our time and actions with what we want versus what we don't want, right? Because whether we realize it or not, we're emitting something energetically 24/7. And so you might as well have it be pointed in the direction of what you want to receive versus what you don't want, right? It's like, you're not going to spend all your time worrying about something and then it's magically going to drop in your lap one day. Chances are it's not going to drop in your lap for that very reason. So when I work with people, I help them get to the root cause of what is holding them back, right? So there are two versions of ourselves. There is who we are now, where we're at in our life, and then there is that version of ourselves that has manifested what we want, that has the life we want, that's doing the work that we want. So I work with people to essentially identify where that gap is, work with them to identify the beliefs that are holding them back, you know, from being in that place. And putting the right practices in place that help them shift that. Concurrent to that, I teach people how to recognize their intuition as guidance, okay? Because what happens is a lot of people question the decisions that they're making, or when they're faced with a decision, because they can't tell the difference between their intuition, their higher guidance, or the fear-based mind chatter.
Right.
So I essentially help them tap into their own unique intuitive abilities, which when you're able to do that, it's a massive confidence builder, right? Because when you're faced with something, you immediately know, you know, where an answer, where a feeling is coming from.
How did you find that? Sorry, go ahead. And then,
and then I work with them on aligning their time and actions with their goals, working with them on manifestation.
Right. Yeah, nice. How did you find your intuition, or how did you decipher that? Yeah,
I've always had gifts ever since I can remember. In particular, as an empath, being very sensitive to energies, but there was a time in my life, and it's probably been about 12 years or so now, when I decided to really dedicate time to meditation and started focusing on my growth path. I had additional gifts that opened up. Meditation for me was extremely life-changing. When prior to starting meditation, I was very stressed in my prior career and had a lot of anxiety. And a few months after starting meditation as a practice, I didn't have it anymore. You know, that was because I was taking the time to go within. And the more that I did that, the more that I started recognizing guidance, you know, because I was open to it, because I was making the space for myself to receive it.
Did it come as like a certain physical prompting, or was it like a certain place in your mind where a thought kept popping up? Like, what did you notice about the pattern of your
in terms of, so each one of us receives that guidance differently. Okay, so for me, it's what I refer to as claircognizance, right? I just know things. Things just pop into my head, you know, during meditation. And at this point, I've been doing it for so long that I can tap in, you know, throughout the day. And I use that ability in service of my clients as well. But for me, that's how it comes in. I'm also very empathic, so I can sense other people's emotions, or I have a feeling when something is about to happen. There are also, you know, some people have the gift of sight, right? Like they can see things in their minds. It's really just discovering how you learn, how you retain or receive information, right? So for me, the claircognizance and the empathic ability is the strongest, but for you, it may be when you ask a question and get an answer, you might tend to see the answer. So it's really just the person tapping into, you know, what does that look like for them? Yeah. And knowing that our intuitive guidance is never going to be fear-based. It's always neutral, but our intuition isn't concerned with keeping us safe. And what I mean by safe is in our comfort zone, you know, playing small.
Right.
Our fear-based mind chatter is always going to be the one questioning, you know, are you sure you want to try that? Because you haven't done that before. You know, what if you fail? What will other people think of you?
Interesting. Yeah, I can think of how much if we let ourselves dream a little bit, how fast the ideas can come, how fast even the vision can open up. And then I can physically feel how quickly we can put the brakes on, right? For like, whoa, that's too big. That's too fast. Like, I can't do that. I can't do that as a story, you know, kicks in because the vision, the picture comes so fast. So anyway, I'm just present to like how easy it is to put brakes on the very thing we asked for. I mean, if we come back to Abraham, where Abraham would say, you know, you're the only uncooperative component. The whole universe is working towards the things you asked for.
It is. And I know you and I were talking a little bit about this before we started the show today, but what causes us to put those brakes on, as you said, is our own belief around how we think something can or can't come to us.
Right.
We have to believe, you know, in possibility. And I believe that, you know, God, or if it's your higher power, whatever that is for anyone who's listening, that there isn't a dream on our heart that isn't meant to be achieved. We have those dreams for a reason.
Yeah, absolutely. I love getting to the spots, especially in the space of marketing, because that's sort of where I live in my work, where we just start to get super honest about things. So what this is making me think of, it's very easy for us, as in you listening to this and me, to say we believe in abundance, right? We believe in the law of attraction because they're very nice ideas. But then when it comes to actually like living in the way that would release that in the world, that would attract those things to us, we have all sorts of brakes that we're applying to our life that aren't allowing in the things we've asked for. So it's nice and coffee talk to talk about how we believe in abundance, and then all sorts of areas in our life where we're stepping on the brake big time because we're afraid to let go of control. So I'm just saying that because I think it's important that, you know, those of us listening to this, as the secret's been out for decades now, right? Like almost 20 years.
Yes. And it's funny you bring it up because I just watched it again very recently for the first time in a lot of years. The Secret is great, but one thing that it doesn't really address is, you know, what blocks us from that abundance, right? And it really is our beliefs. Look, personal growth is an everyday decision. We are eternal students. So as our energetic frequency increases, as we master one lesson, another one presents itself. That doesn't mean that life is always supposed to feel hard. You know, what happens is if we don't learn a lesson or we don't master something, right, or we continue to stay in the same pattern, we'll keep receiving an invitation to mastery, if that makes sense. You know, so again, it just goes back to us being the only thing that stands in the way, right? We have to make a decision that going to be open to possibility, that we're going to be open to what we don't know, right? And as humans, and based upon our conditioning, whenever we think about something that we want, we automatically go into a mode of that it has to be us only, right? Making everything happen, when everything is really a process of co-creation. Our job is to ask for what we want. It's the how, is up to the universe. We just need to follow our intuition as far as where we're being guided, even if it scares us. In fact, what scares us is precisely what we need to run toward instead of away from.
Yeah. Could you say that, or could it be said that every place we feel stuck is just a lesson we haven't learned, or it's a lesson we're being invited to learn, that if we opened our awareness and said, what is the lesson I need to learn so that I can level up, right? Like a couple of years ago, my wife and I got hooked on Candy Crush, right?
Yeah.
And we play Candy Crush, and then we get stuck on a level, and you had to keep figuring out, like, what's the thing that I need to do in order to pass this level? I think that's probably interesting in life. There's probably something that has you stuck at this level, and you could level up if you could just learn the lesson. Is it safe to say that every time we feel stuck and we're not as far as we want to be, that there's just a lesson we're missing?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, we're here to learn. We're also here to enjoy our experience. And when we're not enjoying, it's just because there's an opportunity to learn. There's some type of resistance.
Yeah. I think the thing I like about that is because I think the normal reaction to not feeling far enough along, or feeling like we should be further, is to double down on effort and not ask and not go in for what's the lesson I'm not seeing here. It's just, let's go read more books and apply more strategies on top of it all. So it's not like we're not listening for the lesson. We're just putting more stuff on top of what we think is going to fix it.
Yes, that's our conditioning around being taught that, you work hard and that's when you get your results. Keep looking outside yourself for the solution, and you'll find it, when it's really all of the answers are within.
Right. Yeah. Wow. It's simplistically beautiful when you think about how, like, we have access to all of this divine and vast wisdom, perspective, and yet sometimes stuck in the maze of it all, we just kind of go around and around and around, not tapped in to, the answers that are available. What are some of who are some of your influential authors or people that you really admire and you love to read?
Gosh, I probably an obvious one is Oprah. I mean, I think she is an amazing example of someone who is living on purpose, someone who's followed their path and is showing all of us, what's possible, right? When you realize your full potential. A couple of people who have passed in the last couple of years, Dr. Wayne Dyer is someone else's work who I've followed closely for a lot of years. Louise Hay, who was the founder of Hay House. Sonia Choquette is someone that I followed closely many years ago when I was starting to get in tune with my guides and just with my intuition and that sixth sense, Yeah. And then there are other entrepreneurs and growth experts that I follow, such as Brendan Burchard. I think his work is great. I really admire Sarah Blakely for what she's done in founding Spanx and just what she has accomplished in her life. And then Richard Branson is another person who I follow, who I think is amazing.
Wow, that's cool.
Just a
That's
few
fun.
off the top
Yeah.
of my head.
Yeah, that's great. I love Wayne Dyer. Oprah, somebody did a podcast series. It was a small, like 3 or 4 episode series on sort of like the Oprah show over the course of its time. And you can still find it on iTunes, I believe, but it was fascinating. And there was this moment where she, in her show, I think it was right after she had some white supremacists on her show. And it was one of these moments where it got super tense. And she said, like, it was that show where I said, I will never use this platform for that again. Like that I have a platform, and my platform will only be used to further, the conversation that she was here in the world to lead. And I always loved that type of intention around.
Absolutely. And it's funny, I'm getting the goosebumps as you're saying that too. Also, I would be remiss if I didn't mention Abraham Hicks. I've studied their work very closely for a lot of years. In fact, I spent a year training to become a certified law of attraction coach. And the program that I followed was centered around the teachings of Abraham Hicks.
Did you ever, I don't remember how I got this. I have a set of digital audios from Esther and Jerry Hicks, and it was them in the beginning talking about how they came into this relationship with Abraham. They had heard about, I think it was Jane Roberts and Seth, and they wanted to meet Seth, who was a personality. And anyway, have you read any of the Seth Speaks books or anything from Jane Roberts?
I haven't actually from them, no.
I just heard it. I listened to it again the other day. Every now and then I get in my car, and when I hit my car, I start my car. Just Esther Hicks pops in. She just starts talking, like from that. Somehow it's pulling from my phone into my stereo, but I hadn't heard that before. I was like, I should go check that out because that sounds interesting. Anyway, well, this is really fun. I could talk about this forever. I appreciate getting to know you this way in the podcast, and hope to meet you in person sometime. If people want to learn more about what you do, Jennifer, in your important work in the world, where can they go to find you?
Yeah, I'm very active on social media. The easiest place to find me is at jenniferspor.com. That's JenniferSpor.com. You can learn more about me there. I also have more information about my podcast. I actually host a show called Awaken on Purpose every week, where I interview other people who have also, taken the leap of faith to answer their higher calling. And I'm most active on LinkedIn. I'm out there every day, and I'm also on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.
Awesome. Well, thank you for being on the show, and I love the work you're up to. I think there's an awakening happening in the world. I think people are waking up to their purpose and their calling, and I love that there are people like you in the world that are helping them do that. So thanks for being here. All the best to you, and until I see you in person, see ya.
Likewise, thank you.
Do you have important work in the world? We can help you produce a show just like this one and get your message out in the world. Go to mygroundswell.com to connect with us now.